we're going to go straight into the topic of liquid staking. So you've been doing this for quite a long time now with your background from Aave and now Ether.fi. So this is a very interesting subject, and it's been a topic that has been evolving a lot in Web3. So given your experience, we'd love to just talk about, in your words, how you differentiate non-liquid staking versus staking reporting.
Yeah, I think you hit it on too. I think right now it's definitely the hot topic in DeFi. It's been coming on for a little while, and it's been really cool to see all the infrastructure, all the protocols build on top of this basically primitive or this consensus layer, this ETH staking layer that's kind of evolved ever since we have passed a few of the big milestones in the Ethereum community. Yeah, I guess at a very high level, if we kind of look at non-liquid staking first, as with many proof of stake blockchains, typically you lock up your tokens, provide those tokens for distributed security to that network. So this is effectively non-liquid staking at its basic form. You earn some kind of yield in order to do so. You obviously have to incentivize these users to provide that security. And by engaging in non-liquid staking, you are essentially locking up your tokens and providing that security and efficiency. But during this period, your assets are, in a sense, frozen. So basically, they're not readily available. You can't convert them to cash. You can't use them to borrow against. So your tokens are locked within that ecosystem. From an accounting perspective, I guess it depends on how you view this, but it does make them an illiquid asset. And then you obviously will continue to earn rewards on those. And how you do recognize those rewards is also an aspect to consider, but you won't necessarily realize that until you pull those assets out of the protocol. And then when you do so, there might be some impairment, there might be some other instances or capital gains that you have to look at. So that's where liquid staking came in. It was for users who wanted the ability to have some kind of liquidity on these assets that were locked up, because obviously in crypto or DeFi, we just want max utility. We want max composability. We want to be able to do whatever we can with our assets. And that's the beautiful thing about the system. So liquid staking basically takes the approach where you can now deposit your, let's say, ETH in this case. And in return, you get a representation saying that that ETH has been deposited and put into a validator to the beacon chain, which then goes towards securing the network. So then in doing so, you receive this liquid staking token. There's a few forms that it can come in, but as a representation of your ETH that you've deposited, you can now both earn a yield on that you would get typically from the consensus layer or the execution layer of the Ethereum network. There's a few different ways that you get these rewards, MEV, attestations, block proposals. I think it's, we could definitely spend a whole session on that, but we'll just kind of keep it high level. So those rewards will accrue to your token. And then what's fun is there is a lot there's a lot of infrastructure now built on top of this, where these protocols are now permitting a lot of these tokens to be used for different purposes. So now I can earn yield on my ETH, I can go deposit it, I'm securing the network, I get my token back, and now I can put it in another protocol and I can borrow against it. I can do a bunch of other fun stuff. I can yield farm, I can do all the DGen DeFi stuff, or I can just simply hold the asset as well. And what's good is the way a lot of these protocols are designed is you still have full custody over those assets. So if I next day want to go around and turn around and get my ETH back, I can do so. I can just go to the protocol, I can ask for a withdrawal request, and there's a few mechanisms in how this is handled. But quite simply, I just get my ETH back, and there is not a huge level of risk. Obviously, we are kind of introducing another layer in the smart contract stack. So that's just another thing to consider as far as complexity goes. But liquid staking is come a long way, and I think it's quite simple for users to have access to this.
Perfect. Thank you for giving that background on liquid staking activity, Joseph. I think we can all agree here that it's quite easy to understand the allure of liquid staking versus, for example, non-liquid staking, right? You have your assets locked in one, the other you don't. I think it would be great if we can touch upon the caveats from doing so regarding more on the reporting side. So obviously, it's going to be a little bit more complex from a financial reporting standpoint, tax reporting standpoint. Um, would you have a few pointers that you can maybe share with the audience on what to look for when considering how to report liquid staking?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I guess I didn't quite say, but yeah, it's roughly about 4% yield. So let's just go off that you get on liquid staking tokens. So obviously, if you hold ETH, if you're just long ETH, you're just subject to any kind of price fluctuations. And if you were to swap that out at a later time, that's where you may trigger, I guess, depending on your jurisdiction, your capital gains portion. But with liquid staking, there is a kind of more nuanced approach because uh, it depends. Again, I'm not trying to provide tax or or any advice on the matter, depending on everyone's jurisdiction. But if you do deposit, you essentially are changing the token. So you're taking ETH, you're getting a liquid staking token back. So that is effectively a change in token, which might have some tax considerations that you might trigger off the back of that. And then in addition, you would also start to earn yield on that token that's being staked. So that basically, and it's quite difficult because the way I guess the Ethereum network is structured is uh, you only necessarily realize that accrued income when you actually go to pull the assets out of the protocol that you staked with. So you get your liquid staking representation. You're holding that token, but there is no clear cut fee or interest income accrual that you can clearly see in any type of subledger. So that's where a lot of the difficulty comes into play. Obviously, for corporations, you need to be able to find a way to track your accrued income. If you're not able to do so, it can get quite difficult, and that's where like a lot of this stuff we say wasn't necessarily designed for accountants or finance people because it doesn't show these clear accruals. It doesn't show a lot of this. So for accountants, like a lot of the work is spent on either going to the contract level, trying to give estimates based on an approximate plausible amount of interest income that they may or may not receive, and just really trying to make a best guess on the amount of income you'll receive from this position. So I think that's where a lot of the complexities come in is how much income do I need to record, and how do I do so, and timing wise and everything like that. I think we've seen some other typical protocols on the Ethereum network might uh, allow you to stake some assets and you can actually see a representation of those on chain. I think it's getting better. And I think a lot of these protocols are finding ways to enable uh, different tracking tools to tap into their database and provide better information for their users. But again, I think that still has a long ways to go, and it's going to be a little while before they put accountants at the forefront of these protocol designs. So I think in the meantime, we really have to try to find some creative ways to record the interest earned on these assets.
Awesome. And I'm going to ask you a question, a very popular question we have, clients have, companies, what three companies have when they're trying to figure out best approaches for treating liquid staking. I understand you talked about the taxability could be different, right? Because if you're depositing crypto and then getting an LP token, you're technically doing an exchange. So maybe in some jurisdictions that's taxable, maybe in some others those events are not taxable. But regardless of the taxability there, um, the the simple question, I mean, and maybe it's not a simple answer, but the question I want to ask you is, so once you get that LP token in your books, what are some ways you can treat that LP token, given that there's not going to be a fair market value present for any of these LP tokens?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I guess in that sense, those LP tokens are in relation to, I guess, providing liquidity to any kind of other pool, such as let's take Balancer, for example. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. As far as the liquid staking tokens go, it's fortunate that many of them can simply just be pegged to ETH or something very close, and a lot of these protocols have designed oracles that allow for rebasing and repricing daily. So the pricing aspect is okay. But now, as you mentioned, all these protocols are built on top and allow for these natively yield generating assets to be deposited into their protocol to provide liquidity for other users who want to trade on both sides. So that's where essentially I take my liquid staking token, I put it into a pool. Let's say it's ETH, half whatever this token might be, and now users can swap and trade against it. And for doing so, I essentially get an LP or liquidity providing token that says I have X amount in that pool. So what's very difficult, as you mentioned, Richard, is finding a value for those tokens because there isn't any kind of price feed. They might have just been spun up. A lot of people are randomly spinning up pools. So then it becomes very difficult to value that. And that's, again, where some manual intervention kind of comes in. We can try to automate it all we can, but ultimately you need to give that token an initial cost base when you receive it. And that cost base needs to be made up of whatever assets you deposited. So quite simply, if I put 50% ETH, 50% liquid staking token, and they had, say they were both $2,000 when we put in, that would be the cost basis per unit on the LP token I receive. And then I can hold that and then redeem that at a later time. Obviously, doing that in an Excel spreadsheet or something is virtually impossible. I mean, unless you're only doing one or two, I guess I could assume that it's not too difficult to keep. But as that starts to scale, it becomes very, very difficult to track all this and all the ins and outs. And at some point, you just don't even want to do any transactions because you're fearful of the reporting side that might come of it. So I think, I think that's like the major difficulty. And then obviously, when you're in these liquidity pools, you are incentivized to do so. They need to incentivize someone to provide liquidity, and to do that, a lot of the time it's a portion of trading fees, or there's other external incentives that a protocol might put into that pool in order to really drive up users to put their assets in there. So then actually segregating and dividing that amount earned can again be very difficult. At which point you basically just want to record it all as a capital gains tax or something, and just include the price appreciation that you ultimately receive by the time you get your asset back. So yeah, I guess that was kind of a long-winded way of saying it, but again, it is very difficult to track those LP tokens, and I think even getting support for them, adding them to whatever protocol you're working with is very difficult because there are so many, and they continue to just be spun up daily, that it's quite hard to keep up with a lot of the activity that happens in DeFi. And I guess that's kind of crypto. People can go do whatever they want. There's no one stopping you. So we kind of have to build tools and like thought processes around that that kind of allow for us to have more of a general approach to a lot of this than just a specific targeted per pool approach.
Yeah, that's definitely an easy question to ask, but difficult to answer. Yeah.
Yeah, well, for sure, and I'm sure you guys kind of see that a lot. Like, there's so many pools, so many tokens, so many different things that everyone's kind of operating in, and everyone has like this little niche of the market or the space that they are fully entrenched in. And yeah, I mean, it's a challenge to accommodate all those, but at the same time, I guess that's kind of the fun of it because someone can go operate wherever they want.